Hello, Melissa Crook here with the F.E.E.L Podcast. Welcome to today's new episode, Embracing Purpose, Passion, and Resilience. Grishma Shah on Values-Driven Storytelling. Here are some ways to engage with this episode. Next time you're making a difficult decision or find yourself between two choices, think of your why. Connect your decisions back to your why and your values, remembering who you want to be and what is most important to you. We hope this really helps and supports you as you think about these ways to engage while listening to today's episode with our friend Grishma Shah. Thanks so much for being with us. Hello and welcome back to the F.E.E.L Podcast today. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm your host, Melissa Crook, and I've got a friend here with me today that if you've been watching our panels on YouTube and also on our radio show last year, you have met this friend already. I have Grishma Shah here with me today, but we are going to be getting into more of Grishma's own story today via our talking points. You've heard about us talk about her work in the higher ed sector, as well as her book, which we will still talk about that. And those resources are going to be available on our website at embracinglayers.com. But we're going to get to know Grishma, the woman today, Grishma, the person, and how she got to this space that she's in today and providing these tremendous resources, both as an educator and as well as with her book. So Grishma, welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Great to be here.
Okay. And you described yourself as gritty, resilient, with compassion, independent, and loyal. And I told you before we started recording, I love the gritty piece. I think that's I think more of us have that than we realize. So I'd love that you acknowledge that and see that in your journey. And that's going to be very evident as people learn your story, I think as well. But we're going to get right into it and start with, talk to me about your self-care journey. Talk to me about how that fits in your life now and your journey learning and understanding what that means and the importance of it.
Sure. I think like many women, I didn't even know what self-care was until a few years ago, maybe like well after my kids were in their or 7, 8 or 9 or 10 years old, and people began to say like, oh, like as a mom, you should take care of yourself. And I honestly, the word wasn't even in my vocabulary.
Yeah.
Until a few years ago. And now I hear it all the time, but I'm also much more attuned to practicing it. So I think I've always been a chaser in the sense that I'm always chasing my next goal. And so when you're constantly chasing your next goal, you don't take a ton of time for self-care because you feel like you're on this path where you have to hit the next checkbox. And it took me, I think, because I have so much schooling behind me, like undergrad, master's, PhD. Then after you get your PhD, like the next checkbox is you have to get an academic job and get tenured. And once you get tenured, they're like, okay, well, you have to publish more papers so you can get promoted to full professor. And there was always this chase, like, okay, I have to do the next thing. I have to do the next thing. And I never really knew how to slow down. I just did not know that you could sit and do nothing. Like that was such a novel idea to me until about like 7 or 8 years ago. And now, by the way, I'm very, very comfortable sitting down and doing nothing. And when I meet people who are unable to do that, I'm like, well, it takes practice because I don't know if it's cultural in the culture I was brought up in, or if it's just like how I was raised, or it's just in me, like internal in the sense that chasing bit. But I tell a lot of women, particularly, I'm like, it's okay to just sit and do nothing. And they're like, well, I don't have time to do nothing. I'm like, yeah, you'll be surprised. You will find time to do nothing. And originally I had a really hard time doing it, where I would sit and I would like watch or binge watch something. And then I would feel so guilty about it. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I just binge watched this whole show for like 3 hours. And I would beat myself up about it. And I was like, oh, that. And then I realized, you know what? That was part of self-care. And sometimes I still beat myself up about it because I'm like, oh, you're supposed to get like 10 things done. And all you did was binge this show. But now I'm much more comfortable in it. So comfortable that my family sometimes like, you're just sitting around doing that. I like, yes, because I finally have time. I said, I finally have time to sit and do nothing. So leave me alone, everyone. So I think if we're talking about the journey, for a long time, I had no idea what it was, what it meant. I think when originally I learned about it, it was very superficial to me, in the sense like it meant like, oh, going to get a massage or going to get my nails done. I tried all those things, but those weren't really bringing that, like, it was very, it's like a Band-Aid approach, right? Like, it was like, oh, don't get me wrong. I love my massages and I love once in a while getting my nails done and getting pampered. But so much of that is external still.
Yeah.
And sitting and allowing myself to just be, to me, that's the best self-care.
Yeah.
And not beating myself up about it. Like, I can sit and just be, and I don't have to chase anything. I don't have to be like writing or reading. I could just binge watch, or I could just sit in my thoughts and enjoy the sun in the backyard or whatever. And so it took a long time. I wouldn't say I'm 100% comfortable with it, but I'm pretty comfortable with it.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. You did such a good job with that. And there's a couple things that really stuck out to me. One, that chaser piece. I've never heard it described that way. And as soon as you said that, alarm bells went off in my head. I'm like, yes, that's what we do as women. Because I think that we're always trying to make sure we're not falling behind, because there's already this expectation that we have to do a little bit more. We haven't gotten past that narrative yet. And I do think that cultural narratives and spaces build on that. I mean, your family worked very hard to bring you here and make this what your life has turned into possible. And so you saw that grind and that and the things that you had to do even more of, being an immigrant family, and all the narratives that come with that. And also even just within your culture. I think even if you weren't within, if you had grown up your whole life in India, I think that's still just something that's prevalent for women everywhere, and also within cultural narratives. So I think when you're getting it from all these different angles and sides, you work in higher ed academia, that is still a spot for women where they feel like they got to put in a little more and chase a little harder. So there's so many things, but that chaser piece and that willingness, there's so much value in just sitting. I understand the discomfort with that. I used to be like, for 3 minutes after I'm like, I can sit for 3 minutes. And then I would just get fidgety. Like I couldn't get past the guilt of being productive or continue and not recognizing, if I take this time to just sit, my brain can refresh, things can settle, I can create space. And I started doing a thing, and I don't do it daily, but I do it pretty often. But for a while, I was doing it daily to make it a habit and to move past the guilt piece, where I set my timer for 10 minutes and I picked a quiet spot somewhere, whether it was outside if the weather was nice, or in my house, or in my car if I was waiting for someone, where 10 minutes of just quiet, no music, no podcast, no nothing, just no phone conversation as I was on a walk, just quiet. And sometimes I would like not fall asleep and get into this really deep meditative state, and my system settled, like the calm, like everything just settled in my body. And I was like, wow, that was 10 minutes. There was so much power in that. I feel so rejuvenated. So I'm so glad you brought that up, that simplicity of, it doesn't have to be, I mean, if the nails and massage make you feel refreshed and great, do them. But really think about what is going to help you be mindful, present. What does your nervous system need to settle, so you can be refreshed and have those creative ideas, have that energy to show up the way you want to. But you said something too that I think it's so much part of what the narrative that we're still trying to destigmatize is, when your family will comment about you just sitting there. We're not used to seeing women, moms, professionals, just in general. We're not used to seeing them sit in contentment, quietly, doing nothing. Like we're not used to that. And so when we see someone doing that, the first response is, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. That's the point. It's a good thing. And you're all going to be happier later, because I'm not going to be nearly as crabby or irritable, because I've taken this time to fill my cup. And that binge watching thing, like there was something last night, my husband had something that he was doing after work, and he's like, hey, you want to come? And 5-10 years ago, I would have, even though I didn't really want to, I would have gone because he invited me and it's a nice thing to do and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, no, I don't really want to come. Have a great time. Glad you're going. Enjoy it. I'm going to stay home. There's a show on Netflix I've been wanting to watch. I don't think he's really going to love. So it was my time after my work day to sit there and enjoy that movie. I cried. I enjoyed it. I was 15 minutes after I finished it. He walked in the door. We sat down, had our, I mean, it was just one of those things that I wouldn't have done a few years back. I would have gone and done the other thing to be, and I do plenty of those things, but I think it's just like giving ourselves permission and recognizing that those little moments in time, and sometimes those little longer hours, they matter and they help us show up better because we've taken that time for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminded me of something, even when so now that my children are in their teens now, so they're a bit older, a little less demanding physically.
Sure.
But I remember when they were younger, I used to come home and just sit in the car for 5 minutes, because it's like you did a full day of work and then you come home and I would park the car in the garage and I would turn it off and I would just sit in the car for like 3 or 4 minutes or 5 minutes, just like build up the energy to start my second job, basically, with the harder job.
Yeah.
And I still sometimes I'll just park my car and I was just like, you know what? Turn the car off. I'm just going to sit here for a couple of minutes, take a deep breath, because I just, what's coming. You're going to walk in the door and everything's coming at you from all different directions and everything has to get done. And so I'm like, okay, I know it's just 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but I'm just going to sit in the car till I have to go face everyone. And it's not, everyone knows this, and especially parents, it's not because you don't love your kids, but you just need to sit in the car sometimes.
Yes. No, I'm so glad you said that. I give that as advice to women when I'm talking, when they say they don't have time or they're going from thing to thing. I'm like, give yourself 15 minutes when you get home. Sit in the car in the quiet. Listen to your favorite music, whatever it is. Walk around the block before, you walk into that next phase of the day, which you very correctly pointed out can be the hardest part, because you've got to be emotionally, mentally, physically present with all the needs that are coming your way that need to be met. But if you can go that feeling like, I've had time to separate myself from my workday, digest all of that, take a moment, take a breath, refill, refocus, and then I can walk in the door refreshed and not feeling haggard and out of sorts. So I think that's such an important tip. I think that you can't underestimate the value of a few minutes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So good. All right. And this goes really nicely into confidently setting boundaries. For you, this is something you've learned to do. Like, you've put these healthy boundaries around your time. This time's for me to sit quietly. This time's for me to take 5 minutes in the car before I come in and engage with everybody else. This time is for me to watch the show I've been waiting to drop, or that just brings me peace. I've got a show on Netflix that I've watched 5,000 times, but if I'm stressed out, or if I just need something, I want to watch something where I know what's going to happen. I'm not going to be surprised. It's going to have an outcome that I can live with and enjoy. I'll turn that on and it helps settle me. My family gives me a bad time about it, but it's something that really helps me. And I can recite, I know when scenes are coming, I can say all the lines. My husband can too by default, but it's, it's those, you never know. Or that book that you've been dying to dive into. That you just, it's like, I'm going to go into the bedroom and take, it's half an hour before bed to read this book that I've been waiting to get into. I think, so talk to me about, because you talked about how you were chasing, and when you're chasing, there aren't a lot of boundaries, because you're chasing those things, but you're also allowing all the opportunities in because you don't want to miss anything. So talk to me about that in your journey.
So I think in some ways, and I think this is a result of just being in academia and how our structures are, I think you are in a position where you have to chase when you haven't reached a certain level in your career. Because if you're not chasing, then there's just a lot of competition. And it's one of the very few careers. And a lot of, like, when I explain this to my friends, they didn't fully understand it till they saw me go through it, or even my parents or my family. So what people don't understand about academia usually is you normally get a PhD, which is required to get a full-time position. And after you get a PhD, you normally get what they call a tenure track position. And either after like a 5-year probation period, either you get tenured or you don't.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times, if you don't get tenured, it's almost like a career breaker. It's really hard to get hired somewhere else. Most people at that point will shift gears and find another career. It's not the end of the world. But if that's where your heart is, like you want to be an educator and do research, then it's a really big deal. So in some ways, I didn't have it, like, I felt, at least, maybe I did if you looked at it from the outside, I felt like I didn't have an option to set boundaries, especially at work. Anything that came up, I was a yes sayer. I'm like, yes, I have to be there. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, I'll be there. Right. And it's when after I got tenure, I started saying no to a few things. And I realized that people sometimes didn't necessarily even notice that I said no. Like no one was keeping track. No one was like, oh, checkbox, Grishma showed up here, checkbox. And some of these, I'm talking some events that are very optional in the workplace. Like we will do like a parents weekend. You know, when you're on a college campus, you go in, your parent, and you won't see a ton of professors. It's usually run by student life, and it's like a lot of fun things parents do with their college student. I would feel like the need, like if they ask, like, oh, do you want to show up on the weekend to like engage with a few parents and the students over the weekend so they know what their academic life is like? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there, because I felt like I needed to say yes. And then I realized I didn't. Like they would have figured it out. Yeah. And it's not like they were like, oh yeah, she was there every single time. I mean, maybe some people noticed, but I think we sometimes in our heads build up like we're not allowed to set boundaries. Everyone will notice we're not there. Yeah. And maybe that's a little selfish. Like we're thinking, oh, I'm so important. Like everyone's going to miss me. And sometimes I'm like, I'll say no. And maybe sometimes someone will ping me and say, hey, like, where are you? We miss you. But most of the time people are like, oh, whatever. Life goes on. You know what I mean? Like you'll come to the next one or we'll, whatever. And I think it's important to recognize that, yes, you should show up at work when you're needed and that's essential to your job. But sometimes it's just okay to say, I can't do every single event and I can't do every single thing. And so I've learned in some ways, I felt like I couldn't before I got tenured.
Sure.
And now that I feel a little bit more comfortable saying no to things. Yeah. And it turns out that I'm actually saying yes to all the things where I'm adding most value. Yeah. Right? Because before I was saying yes to everything and I wasn't really valued or adding the value that I could. Like, okay, I talked to students and parents at Parents' Day weekend. I went bowling with some, but like, they would have had fun bowling whether I was there or not. Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, I added so much value because I'm a terrible bowler. And they're like, oh, and then there are things where I'm like, oh, it's really important that I show up at a work event where the students are coming and sitting in a classroom and they want to see what the classroom setting would look like, what the professors are like. That's where I'm adding value. Yeah. Right. So I'm way more selective now. Sure. But I'm also selective in the sense that I'm like, where will I add value? Yeah. And how will it add value to me? And that takes some time to decipher. And sometimes I still make the wrong call. Not the wrong call, but like I'll do something. I'm like, okay, was that really worth all the trouble and stress I went through? Yeah. And, I don't beat myself up about it, but next time I'm like, yeah, let me rethink that. Let me think twice before I say yes to that.
Yeah.
And so I think this goes along with a lot of people just learning to say no, setting boundaries is learning to say no. And so I think professionally, sometimes we are, let's face it, there's a double standard at work. So women have to give more sometimes. So then that boundary setting, I always felt like, okay, not only do I feel like I have to be everywhere, but maybe I have to show up more because I am a woman and whatever else. So professionally, it's been a learning curve. I think with my family, and I think all mothers hate to hear this, I'm usually the one who's overdoing things. And when I don't do it, they don't even notice.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, that is so true. And then we're frustrated or irritated that they didn't even know. Like, oh my gosh, I've been wearing myself out and they didn't even know when I stopped doing that.
Notice that I folded the laundry. They're like, no, like if it sits in the basket, we'll just pick our clothes out of the basket for the week. I mean, I'm like, judge me all you want. I'm like, oh, like we got to get the laundry folded and put away. And like, there have been weeks, I'll tell you, be honest with you, where I just don't have the bandwidth. And I will just put the clean clothes in a basket in the room. And they're like, yeah, we found our clothes. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just me then.
I started doing that. That's so funny you mentioned that. I started doing that. And I think mine were probably junior high and high school, where I just started, they got a bin of clothes, like for my two daughters that slept downstairs. I just put it at the top of the stairs. I'm like, there's your clothes, take them down. There's your bin of clothes, take them. And they're like, great. And now my youngest she likes her spaces organized. So she would take her clothes and fold them and put them away.
Yeah. It's all about personality.
Yeah. And that allowed her the space to do that. And she was welcome to do that. But I love that you brought that up. That's such an important point. And I think too, going back to what you've learned now, like, so if there's other professors that are coming up through the tenure track, you're able to offer some wisdom, like, listen, I realized along the way that family weekend, not necessary. That lecture series, probably a good idea. But I think that what you said about where am I going to add value, that it's also going to add value to me, that's a really good question to ask yourself as you're looking at what you're saying yes and no to.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I think the motherhood thing, I think all of us sometimes are baffled that we don't get to something and no one noticed. And I'm like, but I ran to the mall and picked this thing up for you because I thought it was really important to you. They're like, no, I would have figured it out. I'm like, oh, maybe I just need to chill sometimes. Maybe I need to set my own boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think of those preconceived notions and narratives that are in our heads and deciphering what's actually true here versus something that I've just put upon myself or that I've seen happening around me. And I assume that it must be the thing I need to do instead of just asking that your kid or your partner, how important is this? Because I need to determine if I'm going to take my lunch break today to go deal with this versus not. And that's something I wish I would have done more rather than.
Yeah. Actually, it's such a simple and interesting thing you brought up, Melissa. Just ask.
Yeah.
Like, just ask, whether it's your mom or dad, like how important, like, for example, my mom said, will you take me to get my nails done? And I've been racking my brain, and in my head, I'm like, of course, because like that you asked, Mom, and I have to do this now but maybe I'm putting so much emphasis on it, and she'll be like, oh, we'll go next week if you're busy this week. I just need to ask, how important is it that you get this done today, right?
Yes.
Because you called me this morning, and I'm like now trying to squeeze this in.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's such a simple thing to just be able to ask, okay, does it have to get done today? Like, can we do it next week or whatever? And so I agree. And I also agree with the career mentoring. I think, yes, I've learned, and I share this with everyone. And luckily I also am in a department that is it's a very nurturing department. I'm in a great work culture, generally speaking. Like, I know a lot of women are not happy with the work culture they're in. and deal with a lot of things. But luckily we have this beautiful nurturing department. Part of it is probably because we're relatively all in the same similar phases of life.
Oh, that makes
right?
it
Or
nice.
have been through that phase of life. So we're very mindful, oh, you have preschoolers. Why don't you take a schedule that allows you to get them off to school and then get you home in time to be there for them? Because we do have so much flexibility in how we plug and play, what courses we offer and what time we offer them and who teaches them. And so I'm really grateful for a department that says, now that mine are older, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't need to be home by 3. So I'll teach the afternoon class. You take the one that gets you home before the kids get off the bus.
Yeah.
And I think if more environments were that flexible for parents, everyone would have more positive experience, as you know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then because when you have that kind of experience, I'm so glad you brought that up. It's so important. And I think women feel it even more than men because of just the narrative of workspaces for women is something we're still dealing with. But when someone is willing to work with you and you have that level of understanding and that trust, you're willing to go the extra mile when it allows, because you have received that support yourself. Or, I mean, it feels like something you get to give back. It feels like an opportunity you want to be a part of, rather than, here I am giving them my afternoon again. And because no one ever asked me, they just plugged it in. I mean, I think that is if workplaces thought about that more, listen, if you show up showing that you care about the whole person and their life outside of just this space, they're going to run through a brick wall for you. I mean, and not feel bad doing it because they feel supported, seen, and known in their whole life, not just what they have to offer you here.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And that's what it's very reciprocal. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's so good. All right. Taking care of our emotional health, mental health, physical health. Talk to me about your journey with that. And I think, and this is just an observation, but I think even the work that you've done with your book and how you, even though it's fiction, tell the story of your family, that there was this mental, emotional, physical health piece that even played into that as this opportunity to show gratitude and appreciation to your parents through this medium. So, so that's something a thought that I've had, but talk to me in general too about this journey of recognizing the connection in these different health spheres that we live with.
Yeah. Let's start with physical. So I will tell you this. We immigrated to this country. My family came to this country when I was 7. And I was put into a school system where I didn't know anything. Particularly, I wasn't raised to be very we call it survival mode. We weren't on survival mode. So we didn't have all of these resources to put me in sports, for instance, or whatever. And I was never physically active as a child. I wasn't a big child or anything like that, but I wasn't strong and I wasn't physically active. And mainly because it was not something that was ever emphasized in my family. And the thing is, I think Indian American culture is very different than culture in India. Normally speaking, sports and athletics are not heavily emphasized. Only academics are.
Okay.
So, I joke all the time, with my niece and nephew, gym is the only C I ever got in my life because no one, I couldn't run that, the little fitness challenge they make you do. They make you run the mile and do a push up, a pull up, and I couldn't do any of it. They're like, you are completely out of shape. You can't do anything. And I'm like, I know, because it was never emphasized in my family. And even as a teen, I wasn't very, physically active in the sense that I was taking care of strength building and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's funny, only in the last, I want to say I started walking around 2017.
Okay.
Walking regularly. When I say walking regularly, walking religiously, if I don't walk at least 3 to 4 times a week, I feel off.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
been, and walking, I get the sun, you know what it is. Like you get the
Oh,
sun, you get
yeah.
nature, everything seems to feel better after I walk, to
Yeah.
the point where like even my husband now recognizes it. If I'm like a little crabby, he's like, why don't you go for a walk? He's like, that's going to make you feel better.
Mm. Wow.
Right. And he
Yeah.
goes, why don't you go for a walk? Because it always makes you feel better. And so I think physically, one, I've recognized that. More recently, I've added like a bit of yoga, a little bit of strength training, and all of that is new to me. Like, and I'll tell the people in class, like, this is so new to me because it's not something I grew up with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes a long time to build stamina, but it's never too late. And I'm beginning to do it. And it feels good, actually. I'm really excited that I've begun to take care of myself physically, and also a little bit more about like what I'm putting in my body, like eating cleaner and all that kind of stuff. If not always eating cleaner, trying really hard most of the time to eat like clean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's been the physical aspect of it. The emotional is a little different, and I think a lot of cultures have this. I know I've spoken like I know I watch show like I wasn't raised to talk about emotions, and I think my parents for sure were not raised to talk about emotions. Like we don't sit around and get touchy-feely and talk about emotions. I'm very much thinking like if you've ever watched Everyone Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
The parent, like Raymond's parents, like they're like that. Think that environment, not as aggressive as those parents are, but like we don't like sit around and get touchy-feely and talk about emotions. If someone does, it gets really weird and awkward and like, okay, we don't do that. Right. And so, how I approach my kids, though, is very touchy-feely. Right? So I wasn't raised with it, but maybe it's something I sort of recognize that I really like. I mean, to the point where my kids are like, okay, mom, this is like a lot of TMI, like too much information. I'm like, no, but like, how does this make you feel? How does that make you feel? Like, do you feel validated? Do you feel appreciated? They're like, okay, like, mom, we're good. Like, can you back off? So maybe I just need to, like, on my emotional journey, I need to find a bit of a balance because I still, my parents have gotten a tiny bit better. I think about talking about emotions, or I think my sister and I have gotten a little bit better probing it out of them.
Sure.
Where we'll be like, Mom, we think you're upset right now because this is what's actually going on, not this. And then she goes, oh, okay. Like she hasn't had the upbringing to process emotions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And neither has my dad. Right. And I'm talking about whole generations of people who haven't.
Right.
Right. And so it's tricky because it could get awkward really quickly.
Yeah.
Or you kind of do like chip away at it very slowly.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of invite them in slowly.
Yeah. And I think what I've learned, and it's funny because we had a friend over this weekend and he was saying, my parents, we don't really talk. Like we spend time together.
Sure.
And we talk a lot about logistics and we have meals together, but we don't talk like about anything real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And I think a lot of families are like that.
I think so too.
But when everyone really does want to feel seen. And so when I do chip away a little bit, even at my dad, like, Dad, like, how are you? Like, I think, what do you think about this topic? I feel like it's making you like uneasy. Then he'll like say something. At least I get a sentence out of him.
Sure.
Right.
But you introduce it in a little more of an academic way. So it doesn't feel like you're asking directly about his emotional state, even though that's what you're getting at. You're using something to correlate it that might feel a little more comfortable or familiar.
Yes. So I think it's an interesting bridge because even though I wasn't brought up talking about emotions, I am part of a culture now that's very much about talking about emotions, processing feelings, because I spend so much time doing like yoga and things. A lot of it is about letting go and just, okay, let it flow. You're allowed to feel this way today, and then you move on, all that kind of stuff. And it's part of the reason I also built it into my novel, because if you look, if you read, and I'm going to hold it up for people, it's called Anagram Destiny, in case you're on YouTube and watching. But I did I brought in this idea, build in an idea of talking about feelings. And it's funny because the parents of my protagonists don't really talk about feelings until something bad happens, and then they're forced to talk about it. And there's a whole chapter in which like the dad basically still can't. Right. And so he's like, I call it silent love. It's my silent love chapter. It's a whole chapter on how the dad shows love and what he wants for his daughter after she's gone through all this like trauma, basically, without saying anything.
Wow.
If that makes sense.
Yes. No, that does make sense.
And I think it's like silence is a love language too in itself.
Yes.
And I think I think the dad, it's always like actions speak louder than words, and he would do all these like little things, which made her feel she knew she was deeply loved, even though they never talked about emotions. And I think that's also, I think this is very common in Asian cultures, Middle Eastern cultures as well, that there's this like deep silent love among families, but they don't say the word "I love you."
Sure.
And they don't talk about it. And I think there's also something very special about that.
Yes.
I don't like when some certain emotions are diluted, if that makes sense.
Sure. And actions do speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Like if your people around you are treating you in a way and acting in a way, you feel that. And so that, which in conjunct, on contrast, people will say all the right things, but their actions are not following suit. Those are empty, those are empty words. And so there is a lot of power in that, especially that feeling loved piece. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And I think, going back to the walking piece, that's really, it not only serves you physically, it serves you mentally and emotionally as well. You clear your head, you clear your mind, you process what you need to, you feel better. Yoga has that same power in it. Being mindful, taking those meditative moments, allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to feel exactly where you are today without judgment, without shame. So there is a lot of power and I talk a lot about the importance of writing down and feeling and acknowledging your emotions and allowing yourself to move through them. At the same time, saying that you feel or will do something and not following through with it with the appropriate actions is shallow and like you said, diluted. And so that knowing, like, you've never said it to me, but I see every day through the way you live your life and the things that we participate in. I feel your love every day. And there's a lot of power in that. I think that's an important thing to bring to light. I think that can be missed sometimes. Not that we don't want to hear the words, but if we hear the words without the actions, what's the point? But, so yeah, being able to bring both together. But I do think there's an important in just the reverence and importance for the family and the family dynamic and how we care for each other that is really evident as well, I think is really powerful. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's such an important piece. And that part in your chapter 2, that silent love piece, there's a lot of power. We don't always have to be saying words all the time. There's a lot of power in being able to sit with the ones we love, just being together, sitting in a room together, not having to say a thing, knowing that we appreciate each other being there, sharing that space together. That's another really powerful thing. And a way, especially when you're dealing with generations, because this is a new thing across the board for us to be talking about. I mean, we do talk about how the different cultural narratives and differences there can be, but also just across the board, I think in culturally everywhere, we're really just getting into this conversation over the last 10 years about emotions and allowing our safe spaces and places to feel, process, move through them, the physical ramifications that can happen if we don't, the diseases and the stressors and the anxiety and all those different things we carry in our body if we don't allow ourselves space. But there's a nuance within that. And you spoke so well to the nuance of that. So thank you so much. Those are such great examples. Like how we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. I feel like you modeled this really well, both in your workplace, but also in your book, the way you presented this story, and the way you talk to your students. And we talked about this a lot in the panels, about what's happening in the world, and thinking about, if I make this business decision, it's going to have an impact on these people. Have you thought that through? A lot of these people you're talking about are women and children. And so just by nature of your work and the types of things you talk about and advocate for, you show up really organically in this space. And also within education, it is, if you're working in higher ed, it's so important to have women showing up for each other and supporting each other in these spaces rather than seeing each other as competitors, which has very much been a pattern over time. So talk to me about all of that and how that has played out in your life and how you've seen that unfold.
I think when it comes to, I will say this, so because I've been in higher ed for so long, but I'm also surrounded by mothers who have teens who are soon going to go to college. I am constantly around chatter, is what I say, around the pressure of getting into college and going to college and getting good grades and extracurriculars. And I call it chatter because I think when your child finds the right institution, the right fit, whether it's college or not college, but especially if it's a college, that they shouldn't apologize. Like sometimes I have these students, they'll come to me, oh, I really wanted to go to like NYU, but I didn't get it, but I still wanted to go to the city. So I picked Manhattan University because we're still in the city. Right. And I said, but like, you don't need to validate yourself to me about like why you chose, because I'm going to give you 150% no matter what.
Yeah.
Whether this was your top choice or your last choice.
Yeah.
Right. And for many people, it was their top choice. But the point being that there's space for everyone in this world, and to stop like sort of apologizing in a way or justifying why you made certain decisions. I find myself doing it too sometimes, where I'll say, I wanted to I wanted to maybe go teach at R1 University, but I chose Manhattan because I wanted a work-life balance. But I've been so happy at my institution for the last 15 years, like so genuinely happy with the culture, with my students, and I'm thinking like, okay, why am I doing that? It's probably because someone else is having that expectation. Right?
Yeah.
And so we need to, I think we tend to apologize when we feel like this is what this person expected of me.
Yeah.
But I did something differently. So now I have to justify or apologize or validate why I behaved in this way. And once we stop, like, okay, that was their expectation, has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
I should have run my course or taken my path either way. And I build it around that framework because, like, what I'm telling these parents usually is like, there's a college for everyone. Within that space, they will find a path and they will find their way. And there's not that much that we should be stressing about or worrying about, even though it's natural.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so really good.
I think when there's a mismatch of someone else's expectations with what you were delivering, you tend to apologize. But really what you're delivering is what is authentic to you, right? So
yes.
I think showing means we kind of care a little bit less about what expectations are of others.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how I see showing up unapologetically.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is a mouthful.
I love that. I think that's so important. I think women especially can fall into this place of over explaining and apologizing for things that they don't need to be apologizing for. And within those expectations, whether there's somebody's real expectations or something that is in your head that you've decided they must have expected of you, releasing those. And we'll get into that in a minute, but that you don't have to over explain or justify. This fits you, show up unapologetically as who you are in this space, allow yourself. And when you show up unapologetically, I really think it's an invitation to others are like, I want more of what she has. I like the way she's showing up in this space. She feels very sure of herself, very content, very not judgmental of other people's choices, ready to support. But I really like the way she's carrying herself here. I think that is also an invitation for others to do those things as well. Yeah,
I agree. I think I notice this all the time. Women starting sentences with, "I'm sorry, but I just have to ask this," or "I'm sorry, but can you explain?" Like, I'm like, we have to stop starting sentences with "sorry."
yeah, yeah. I actually so I work with a women's group out of the Craig School of Business here at Fresno State University, and it's called the GAL Initiative, Gender and Leadership. And we really work with women going into, and anybody who wants to come, but primarily women and those who identify as women that want to go into workspaces that are male dominated spaces traditionally. So helping them really build up not just what they're learning in college, but the confidence, the skill sets, how to their brand, believing they deserve to be seen, known, and heard. And one of the things that I talked to them about a couple of months ago was I'm like, don't ever walk into a room and when you have an idea or something you want to share or a thought or a question or anything, don't ever, especially as a woman, lead with, "I'm sorry, but." Don't do it. Go in front of your mirror and train that, because a few of them had come. I was like, "I'm sorry to keep you." I'm like, don't ever apologize. I chose to be here.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite spaces that I get to inhabit here locally to help you and support you in any way that I can. And whenever you go into a space, you don't have to apologize for showing up in the room, having a voice, having a question, a concern, or even needing to ask a favor. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a little thing, but it's a big thing, and that you can just take out of your vocabulary, because it changes the way someone receives you when you just start it confidently versus with, "I'm sorry, but." So I'm so glad you spoke to that. That's really good.
It's also learned behavior where it takes time to shed it.
It does. Same. Like, I am a recovering over explaining champion of the world. Just ask my family. And it was really through my family saying, "You don't need to justify that. You don't need to explain it. It's good. Go do you." I was like, and
exactly.
It was such a good reminder. All right. The importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values in what you do. You're very clearly aligned with your work. And this is going to tie really well into the next talking point of living out of your own expectations, which you've already touched on a little bit. But getting back to that why and values and what you do and how you do it. Talk to me about how that you've aligned those things in your life, in your journey.
Yeah, I think the why question's always been, it's never how I framed it, but I think I've always known what I want, which is I want to be like during adolescence, I had these very, I guess, watershed experiences where I got to go abroad and do service work and see the world. I got to spend time in Kenya and Philippines and Honduras. Like I saw the world at a young age and what sort of impact you can have on it.
Sure.
Right. So the why has always been like, how do you build a better world? Right. How do you build better, kinder world where people are not suffering at the level that we see suffering.
Yeah.
And over time, I've learned that the best way to do it is to start with young people and make sure you explain it to them or expose it to them. Because if you lived a very sheltered life, and if you grew up, let's say in the suburbs of New York, and you never really had exposure, and the only exposure you had is through like Instagram or some videos or documentaries, and you've never spent time outside of that, you don't necessarily get to recognize that you can have impact, that you can actually do something about it, that there are small things. And I'm not saying that, clearly we're not going to save the world, all of us, but we can have impact in it, right? We can do small things that are going to matter. And so the why is always like, okay, I'm going to write a novel. How is that going to make the world a better place? I am going to teach about X, Y, or Z topics. How do I teach it in a way that long-term has positive impact, right? Like being at a business school, trust me, so much of it is profit-driven. So much is like, okay,
I know.
How do we make the most money? And I'm always reframing like it's not that you have to make them. Yes, try not to go out of business. That's really important, right? You need to make sure that you, in the process, are not just making the world a better place, but not making decisions that are hurting people.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That are actually at the other end of this. And so the why has always been whatever it takes. And through the novel, I think so by storytelling in this deep way, where you create so many emotions, right?
Yeah.
Like so many like serious, significant emotions. I think by default that builds empathy. Right?
Yeah.
This is why we've talked about this before, Melissa. Young people, like children who read, tend to be highly empathetic because they've gone through so many different characters and their emotions in different places in the world.
Yeah.
All right. And so they're like, oh, well, I read about like, and I think I even mentioned this to you in one of our panels. Both of my daughters are readers, big readers. And they read a lot of, they read everything. They read fantasy, they read realistic fiction, they read all sorts of stuff. What I find in, especially my older one who started reading at an earlier age and is a much more prolific reader, is she's so non-judgmental. I was actually having this conversation with the same friend over the weekend. I said, my older daughter is one of the most non-judgmental people I've ever met. She, in fact, will call me out sometimes when I'm saying, Mom, like, she's like, Mom, you're being judgy right now. Like that
I've heard the same thing before. And it's judgy.
And I'm like, oh, okay. But I think part of the reason that, of course, some of this is like, personality. Part of it is that she reads so much and she goes through so many emotions with these characters and in different parts of the world and different scenarios and different types of, whether it's grief or love or, triumph, whatever, she's going through it. Like she gets so invested, I always joke, when I leave her home alone, I always joke, please don't burn the house down. And I say that not because she's cooking or anything. I say it because if there's something like if someone's breaking into the house, she will not know because she's so invested in her book.
Yeah, she in that world.
Like, oh, yeah, she's in that world. And I'm like, okay, can you just be conscious a little bit? And so, but I think in that is something that come out something so positive, which is that she's very empathetic. And people who are empathetic at that level will think, they will think a lot before they make decisions that negatively impact someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so when I think about my why, even through teaching, whether through it's the novel, I said, how can you widen people's exposure to how other people in the world are living or what they were given in this lottery of life, really?
Yeah.
It's a lottery, right? Like where we were born and who we were born to and what country we were born. It is,
100%
random. I always tell my students, if you're sitting in this classroom with me and you're getting this education, I know you don't want to believe it, but you're like 1 or 2% you're privileged. You're 1 or 2% of the world, which means you already won the lottery. So stop saying I want to win the lottery, because you won the lottery because you just have a resource as simple as access to education.
Yeah.
Do you
And
know?
the difference that makes that we take for granted.
Yeah. So it's like what they have. There are literally kids and young people around the world that would just give anything to have that. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think then in return, what is there, no matter what career path they take, it should be very, very socially conscious career path, in the sense that whether I become a doctor, or whether I become a business person, or whether I become, whatever it is, like an entrepreneur, that they make very socially conscious decisions of how this impacts people,
Yeah.
the environment, all that kind of stuff, and it's not just profit driven. And I have to say, Melissa, I've been really impressed. I know, like, the younger generations get a lot of flack for, being on social media too much, all that kind of stuff. But watching generations go through higher education, I can tell you the generations that are coming through now in the last 5 to 10 years, they're way more socially conscious than people who I started teaching very early in my career. The people early in my career, I used to have to tell them that your business should have a purpose aside from profit.
Wow.
Now they come in with the purpose. And I'm like, wait, you got to make money or you're going to go out of business.
I think that's such an important distinction. I'm so glad you said that. And I noticed it even in my own daughters. Like, my husband and I are all the time, they're between 26 and 30. And they're way ahead of the game in terms of how they think through their impact than we were at this point. And I mean, just way ahead of the game. It's at the forefront of their minds in this process. So it's so interesting to hear you say that about the students you're seeing, because that feels like what we've seen as well, just in our own family unit. But that reading piece and the travel piece, when you have the opportunity, those things change the way you engage in the world. They change the way you engage with people. They impact the way you make decisions, whether it's about your business, whether it's about how you vote, whether it is about what you buy and what you don't buy, and based on who you're supporting or not supporting. Those things matter. And it's through, encouraging those avenues of opportunity. And like I said, with the books, you can, like, if I can get, there are some books that come to mind that I've gotten into that I'm so there. I'm so in the moment. And it also takes me spaces and places I would have never been able to go, like, if I hadn't had that opportunity, and also comes out of it with like, wow, I never thought about it that way before. That really gives me a new reflection or insight. And we talked about this on the panels and on the radio show about why you chose to write a fiction book, even though it's based on a lot of your experiences growing up and an homage to your own family, because it is an invitation for people that wouldn't maybe normally pick up a fiction book about that to go on a journey with you, because they are more likely to pick up a fiction book about that. And you and I talked about how that can be a bridge right now to connect people where your values are actually not that different. It's how you're getting there is where you're running into issues. But if you can see your connect points through this book and engaging in it together, then that can open up doors for conversations that you wouldn't have otherwise. I mean, and so I think bringing that into play here, and that's a sneak peek. Go check out our panel conversations where we talked about the power of the written word. Go into our radio show archive. You can find that on our Substack and find the conversation last fall where Grishma and I get into that. That's all available on our website at embracinglayers.com. But I wanted to bring that in too, because that's another way that your why has come in. It's like, I can make impact with this story if I go this route, which this goes nicely into living out of your own expectations versus others. in higher ed academia, writing fiction is not a normal route you see. From Dr. Grishma Shah has all of these articles out here about her work, that nonfiction, business articles, those kinds of things that you publish when you are a tenured professor. And she's written this fiction story too. So talk to me about that, the expectations around that you've navigated.
Yeah. So, like you said, when I first started writing the novel, even when I was pretty close to getting it published, there were very few people, like in my inner circle, I would say at work, who knew that I had written a novel. Right.
Yeah.
And part of it was because you're like, it's supposed to be very serious and everything's supposed to be hard data and science and all of those things. And I do all of those things. I have lots of articles on it, but I've also sort of found that it wasn't engaging a wider audience, right? I mean, how many people are looking up academic art? It's a very close circle. The people who look up academic articles are people who are also doing research in that field.
Yeah.
Or, it's very sort of internal in some way. And so you're not really reaching a wider audience in any way. Right.
Sure.
So that's why I chose fiction, for all the things I told you. I think it builds empathy, compassion. It integrates all of these things I've been doing for years, which is taking my students abroad on trips and observing the changes that are taking place in the world, and also a bit autobiographical in the sense of what my upbringing was as an immigrant to this country. But I think in the beginning I was very hesitant to share this idea at work. But over time, as I did, I actually found that people really were fascinated by it, number one, and two, really into it. Like they were like, oh, that's kind of cool. Don't get me wrong. There might be a couple of people at work who are still kind of like have their, nose in the air and are like, this doesn't count as like something legit, right? Or whatever.
Oh, wow.
But a majority of people have just been really supportive and actually been sharing with me all of their outside talents and hobbies, right? I think I mentioned this to you. I went to an academic conference where I brought it up.
That's right.
And I would have never brought it up to this person, but I said, why, what do I have to lose? And he said, oh yeah, I have a pen name and I write, I think the genre that was called romantasy, which is romance and fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's just very serious, very serious academic, really well known. And he's like, no, I write romantasy under a pen name. I'm going to send you my pen name and the links to my books. And that would have never have come up in conversation unless I shared. Right. Yeah. So I think all of us, we'll talk about embracing layers. All of us have these different layers, right?
Yeah.
To us. And we sometimes are like, okay, well, this layer I can only share with this group, and this layer I can only share with this group, and this layer I can only share with this group. And sort of coming out of that and saying, no, you can share every bit of yourself with different fragments of your life. I think it's really helped over time, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad it's really been such a fun experience, right? It's been a hard experience. Don't get me wrong. There's been lots of rejection. It's been a hard experience, but probably the one that I've grown from the most, personally and professionally.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And anything else you want to say about expectations? Because you've spoken to it some already, but this is something that you've had to navigate a lot in your life.
Yeah. So luckily, I think, in terms of my family, particularly my parents, right? They've always been very open-minded, but they did have an expectation that, I would be able to sustain myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
One, I would pick a career that is not necessarily creative, where, don't be a starving artist, because that's going to be tough. Right. And so I think from the beginning, the way I chose a path had always been at some point to think through okay, how can I answer my why, but still do it in a very professional way, and seemed like academia was a route. when I first, told my parents I'm writing a book and all of those things, it was hard. They just thought it was great to begin with. So from that point of view, that expectation has been not something I've had to battle with, if that makes sense. It was more like how I align the professional with the personal and the creative with the personal. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, because I think that's something that you run into a lot when your parents have worked so hard to get you to a point, that balancing act of following what is authentic to you, and is there a way to marry that with their expectations, but also being willing to release and be true to yourself, and finding a way to balance that. And you found a way to balance that, which I think is really, because it's not always that easy is not the right word. It's not always that clear. Like sometimes,
and I do think that I'm not bringing the personal into this at all, right? I think part of it is like, I've also done all of the other checkbox. I got married, I had children. I think, had I become a professor and written a book and not been married and have children, which is like a really big thing for them and our culture.
Yeah.
And I think every culture, like women are expected to get married and have children, or if they choose one or the other, or don't choose any of them.
Yeah.
No matter how accomplished they are, people question, but why isn't she married?
I know. Still, I literally had a conversation with a woman about this morning, and she helps single women now live their best lives and get past those narratives. So there's still a lot to work on there.
Yeah. So I don't want to completely undermine the expectations. Had I not met some of those other ones,
sure.
Right? Had I not checked the boxes on some of those other ones, maybe the book would have been questioned. Like, okay, why don't you focus on finding the right guy instead of writing this book? I don't know. I don't know what that would have looked like, but I can assure you that it is a question that comes up for a lot of women who have chosen not to get married, but are super accomplished in other ways, or whatever it is, or women who are married and have chosen not to have children, or may not be able to have children. Like, it doesn't matter like how successful they are in other aspects of their life. So in terms of expectation, I think that still exists. I guess maybe I just checked the right boxes at least somewhere.
I know, but I'm so glad thank you for that, because I think that's a really important thing that we're still working out and still figuring out how to navigate as women, because those things are still out there. So thank you for bringing attention to that. I appreciate that. All right. And you touched on this a little bit already, but accepting the layered aspects of ourselves, all those parts and pieces that make up our journey and who we are, and getting, even for the things we didn't love as much or that were hard and we don't want to talk about, that we still get to a place of contentment, acknowledgement. And I call it curiosity versus judgment. Like, okay, I understand why that happened, or I can see how we got there given this was our situation. So talk to me about the layers journey for you.
Oh gosh. I think journey is always the right word to use, because I don't think any of, I'm one of the few, I've seen this trend on like Instagram lately and all over this place. Like, oh, if you had to talk to your younger self, what would you say?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm one of these people who I actually was a much more confident and secure younger person than I am maybe now, because now I question things a lot more. Right? I question my layers a lot more. Like I said, because I was always chasing, always was confident. I knew what I wanted. I knew what the goal was.
Yeah.
Like, as young as 17, 18, 19, I knew, like, this is what I wanted. This is what I'm chasing. And like, the layers come in because once I had nothing to chase, I felt very lost. And I felt like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm not like, I checkbox this, I did this. Like, what am I doing? And I think that's what I struggle with the most. One of the things I struggle with in terms of like accepting all, like, this is okay. This is a phase of life. You can sit and like, this is also a part of you, is once even after I finished writing this book, because like that was not a checkbox, it was a passion project, but it took 7 years to get it published, right? So there was like this big line of rejection, and it took a lot of grit and a lot of resilience to get to the point where it's published and out in the world.
Sure.
And so for a long time, I was just so determined. I'm like, no matter what happens, this book is getting out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's
Mm-hmm.
it. And like, once it happened, it's been out for 6 months. And I'm like, okay, now what? Should I be writing my next one? And sometimes I I'll set a word limit for myself, and I won't write, and I'll beat myself up about like, why am I not doing it? But again, like that chasing switch is so hard to turn off for me.
Yeah.
So hard. Even though I'm learning and I'm able to sit with myself now and go to yoga and spend a lot of time napping sometimes,
Yeah.
I'm a napper, and I just like, even my family makes me like, you really like to nap? I'm like, yeah, it's because I have time to right now. So like, it's just let me nap.
Yeah.
But that, like, it's this constant battle in terms of the layers about, should I be chasing? Should I be doing my next thing? Or should I, it's okay. Just relax.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I love that. I love the way you explained that piece about the layers. And, I think it's so interesting when you release a book and just being able to take a moment and sit and like, gosh, look what I put out in the world, because you're trying to promote it. You're trying to let people know it's there. And you're talking about it and doing all those things. And, my therapist talked to me about this a few months ago, and she's like, you're really great at getting to a moment and then like, great, I got to this moment. How do I get to the next moment? She's like, but you don't stop, which I guess is really chasing. She's like, I would like to see you recognize your wins in those moments. So I want you to consciously each day while you're journaling, I want you to acknowledge a win within that day. And we're not talking about my book is a #1 bestseller. We're talking about, gosh, I took that time for myself and I didn't apologize for it. That was a win. She's like, in those moments, finding those wins, or we had, and it can be work related too. It's like, gosh, we got to this follower level and we are really engaging well. It's just like, whatever it is, whatever feels like a win to you, that you got a good night's sleep, whatever it is, take the moment to recognize the wins within the day. And I've been doing it for not quite 2 months now, probably 6-8 weeks now. And it really does make a difference, but it's not a natural inclination. It is not a natural inclination of ours. And that is part of our layers journey, and like that kind of ebb and flow of how we respond to those things. So thank you so much for that. That was really, I think, really authentic to what so many of us are experiencing. Yeah. So good. All right. In Living Out F.E.E.L, finding empowerment, embracing layers. Talk to me about the impact that has had, because your life is really a picture of that and your journey that you're on. Talk to me about how, as you've grown into this, how it's impacted your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people.
So, let's start with myself, because that's easier, right? I think, like, again, back to like just being able, like taking the moment, like you just described, taking the wins and all of those things. I often forget to do that, right? But because I've been, even like small little things that'll happen related to the book, I'm beginning to appreciate it. So when the book first released in September, I was like, just watching the numbers and watching this and watching that. I'm like, oh, is anyone like even looking at it on Amazon or whatever? And then a few months into it, I really hustled with marketing and promotion. Like I was everywhere, right? A few months into it, I was completely burnt out.
Yeah.
Like completely burnt out to the point where no matter what was happening with the book, I was constantly thinking about it. And I was not appreciating the people who were actually reading it and telling me like, oh, this book resonated with me, or I really like this book, or I really like small wins, as you would say. And sometimes they weren't even small. They were like really legit in the sense that like some women's group invited me to speak to 100 people. That was not a small win. That was pretty big, but I was just like, oh no, but are they going to buy books? And can I come over there? And what bookstore is going to be there? And I was like, I just needed to step back a little bit and say, why did you write the book? Right? You never wrote the book because it's going to help you retire. Authors don't get to retire off of books, right?
No.
You never wrote the book because you wanted to become a bestseller, or you wrote the book because you wanted people to read the story, right? And by reading the story, they will be better people because now they understand someone else's journey, right? And you're building empathy, and that was happening already. That was happening. So I'm like, what am I burning? And it takes time to, and it's still, it's always a battle, right? It's like one day you wake up and you're like, okay, I need to sell more books or like more people. And the next day you wake up and you're like, wait, people are reading the story. Like a bunch of libraries have it. I'll give you a small little win. My local library system has 7 copies of the book, physical copies of the book, because they picked it for a book club and I went to go speak. And I checked recently, all 7 copies were checked out.
Oh, wow.
Right. And like on the system, it says, 7 copies all checked out, like not on show. And I would just, what a win.
Yeah.
Right. That's 7 people who have consciously gone to the library, either seen the book randomly or heard about it somewhere and have actually checked out, who are reading it. So hasn't my why been answered and hasn't my why happening? But here I am like beating myself up about like, oh, but where's my Amazon ranking? It doesn't, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The relationship with other people. They love me whether I wrote the book or not.
Yes. That's so good. Yes. And we forget that.
Yeah. I mean, my family never for 7 years when I was having a hard time getting it published, for once, there was no like judgment or anything. They were just the biggest cheerleaders. Like, my younger daughter, I think she was 9 when I started writing. And then like, I kept getting rejected. And like, every time I think there was one time I was up for a big contest and I didn't win. And I was in tears and she's like, well, Mommy, I still love you. Like, I love you no matter what. And I was thinking, you know what? I have people around me who are not there to judge me based on whether I publish this book or don't publish this. Whether I become tenured or not tenured. Whether I am whatever. It just and I think the relationship with other people is, as long as you have people like that in your life, you're okay. And these are really good friends. These are family members. This is my immediate family. And when you find people like that, keep them around because they are not judging you on your external accomplishments. They're like, we are here for all of it. The wins, losses, whatever it is. And so I think my relationship with other people has been this recognition that the people who have been there for the whole ride are going to continue to be there, whether the ride gets bumpy or not.
Yeah.
And to recognize those people and keep them close. And if I am somehow becoming distance from them because life is getting like, reach out and make sure I stay in touch and make that extra effort with those people because they're the people who really matter.
Yeah. And those are the people and the relationships that make a life, if through all the ebbs and flows and all the ups and downs. Thank you so much for that. That was so good. I love that piece of those people are going to love me regardless of whether I write a book or not. I think that's something we lose sight of sometimes. And it's so important to go back and recognize, man, I've got this gift of these people around me that are for me, and like you said, are here for the ride. And that's important. And that's what builds a life. Thank you so much for that. All right. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Okay. binging TV, binge watching anything that would just lets me turn off, walking, all right, going for a walk every day, just spending time with my girls, right? And I know this sounds ridiculous. I love driving them around. Like I'm one of these moms who like feels like the best conversations are had when I'm picking them up from one thing and dropping them off at the other thing. And like, I'm actually not looking forward to my daughter getting her license, not because I'm worried, but because I'm like, oh, we're going to lose that time. She's going to drive herself around because it really nourishes me. Just generally, like anytime I'm in a very positive family environment, it really truly nourishes me. Right. Because I have like just quality time with family, and writing actually as well. Writing nourishes me, and I wish I did more of it, but just sitting down and like, I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, or maybe writers can. It's like, I read a really good sentence, I'm like, oh my God, this sentence is so good.
Yes.
And like, I'm also like upset with myself for bad sentences, but sometimes I'll like write a sentence. I'm like, oh, this is good. I like this sentence. So I know it sounds ridiculous, but
no, those things matter. I mean, because you when you do something like that, you're like, oh, that's gonna hit. People are gonna connect with that. No, I love that. Thank you so much. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh gosh. I want to feel relaxed. I want to really enjoy the coming summer and feel relaxed. Positive. Want to continue to stay positive, not let like any setbacks get to my head. Loved. Right? Just continue to feel loved. Accomplished. Right? It is important to me that I feel my own sense of accomplishment. And also productive. Yes, like people around me love me whether I write the second book or not. But for me, I want to write it because I do have a story in my head. And so I want to be productive about it. I have a story I want the world to read. And so I would say those things.
And I'm so glad you said productive. I want to sit with that for a minute, because productivity, when you're taking care of yourself, is a good thing. It's when you're so focused on productivity that you tie it to your value and you're not taking time to take care of yourself. That's when it becomes a problem. So I'm so glad you brought that light to productivity and what it can be when it's healthy and motivated in a healthy way.
Yeah, when it's balanced. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. All right. Grishma, tell people where they can find you, follow you, find your book, all those things. And this will also be on our website, embracinglayers.com. It's also connected to our radio show and our panels. So there's multiple places you're going to be able to find these resources. But let people know right now that are listening if they want to jot it down right now.
Sure. Thanks, Melissa, for having me on. My book is called Anagram Destiny, and you can find it anywhere you find books. It is on Amazon, but if you're a small business supporter, you will find it on bookshop.org. My website is my last name and first name.com. So Shah Grishma, SHAHGRISHMA.com. And then if you get to the website, you'll find all my social handles, my Instagram, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. So I won't bother you with spelling all of that out. But the best way to do this is just remember Grishma Shah and then know that it's shahgrishma.com.
Okay.
And the book is called Anagram Destiny.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I have my copy. I've got to dive into it. It's on my list of books. I love it when I meet people and they have these books. And I'm so thankful I didn't mention this in the beginning, to our friend Pooja Shah, who introduced us and connected me with you. She reached out to me. She's like, I've got somebody for you. I'm like, oh, I love when that happens, because I know it's going to be good, because it's somebody that I've already connected with, that's already been part of this network with me, that knows what we're looking for, knows the kind of women that are going to connect with us. So I'm so thankful for that. So shout out to Pooja for that. Thanks so much for being with me today. I appreciate you so much and how you show up in the world. And listeners, there was so much in this episode. Get the book, get Anagram Destiny. Think about your impact in the world this week and how your life aligns with that. Have you connected your impact and your intentions and really thought about that. I'm going to challenge you to think about that this week. I think that um, Dr. Grishma Shah speaks to this so well and lives her life in alignment with this. And it's a really powerful lesson that I think it's good for us, all of us, to sit with every so often and take a look at our impact. All right, everybody, take good care of yourselves. Thanks again, Grishma, for being with me.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you to all your listeners.
Absolutely. All right, take good care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hello, Melissa Crook here. Thank you so much for joining us on the F.E.E.L Podcast today, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers. I hope you found today's framework and resources supportive and informative. To learn more about all that we offer here at the Embracing Layers Network, visit embracinglayers.com. You can go to our contact form to schedule me as a speaker for your next conference, workshop, or seminar. You can go to our book page to order our book that Jessica Garrison, our wonderful and talented writer and author, authored with my support. And engage with this framework in written form with your journal or in a book club with other women, inviting them on this journey with you. You can look at our resources page for all of the helpful and insightful resources our guests offer and share. You can find the schedule for our weekly Together We Feel women's panel conversations that we're holding each Monday on our YouTube channel. And you can find the links to all the spaces and places you can follow, engage with us on social media, and join our engagements that are happening on our Substack site. There is also a donation page where you can donate to support our work to ensure we can continue to bring you these incredible guests, conversations, and support. Thanks again for joining me this week. Share with your friends and give us a review on your favorite listening platform. Your feedback helps us ensure we're bringing you the content that will best support you and having an empowered, embracing layers journey. Take good care, and thanks for giving us some of your valuable time today. We truly appreciate you so deeply.